بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وألحقنا بعبادك الصالحين. We continue inshallah with the details of the same chapter we're still on, which is understanding Islam. We spoke initially about the meaning of Islam. We spoke about how Islam remains the same message, although the names have changed between Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, but the core message is the same from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the creations of mankind and jinn via the prophets and messengers, peace be upon them all. We spoke also about the elements of the religion and how there are three interconnecting circles: Islam, Iman, Ihsan. We spoke about what they mean practically, so we know what we are to learn and what we need to understand in order to practice our religion, being the fiqh and the aqidah and the tazkiyah, the purification. We spoke also about the impact it has on the individual as a whole. Today's title, inshallah, is What Should the Priority Be? Now, someone may hear or read this title and say, but hang on a second, we have always been talking about everything being closely entwined and interconnected, and they all form the bigger picture or the main thing, if you like, or the religion itself. Why are we now talking about priority when we said that Islam, Iman, Ihsan, they all make up the religion? And we spoke about the fiqh, aqidah, and tazkiyah, which makes the practicality or the practicing of the religion. And we spoke about the three elements which develop the person and advance their thinking or their mind or their heart condition or their actions and disciplines, all of this. Why should there be a priority over something else? We will understand, inshallah. The idea is not that we disconnect anything or we disharmonize anything. The idea is that the what we have discussed remains the same, but we will see shortly, inshallah, what we mean by the priority. Now, we will see, by the way, a lot of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has carved this religion in such a way that is so just to everyone. Because remember that the religion has been sent to everyone. Remember that the Prophet, peace be upon him, has been sent as a mercy to the whole of mankind. The message of Islam is the message for every human being. Every human being falls into this. And this we understand, or we did understand from the beginning, or the recording before the last one, the one before the last one. We understood how the last message, the message of Islam, compared to the other messages, is supposed to be serving humanity in every corner of the globe. This is why the characteristics and the differences between Islam and Christianity and Judaism, for example, is there because this message will remain until the end of time. So it's to serve every person in this world, and it's to serve every time in the past, present, and future. For example, we mentioned that it's been protected, it's been preserved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if it's to be for every person in every place, then there has to be something that is a priority, and that priority is to be relevant to every person, that everyone will be able to benefit from. So, one important thing to remember is that we take our worship and obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala everywhere. So, wherever we are today or in the coming months or years, it's only a change of circumstances. It does not and should not change the reality of a person's responsibility in worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fully, sincerely, and continue to be a better person. And these key words, fully, sincerely, and to be a better person, this falls into also the remit of what we've been talking about, how a person's mindset is protected and disciplined, how their heart is disciplined, and how their character and conduct is also disciplined. So again, we're coming back to something core, that if these are to be preserved, someone's heart and someone's mind and someone's actions are to be preserved with the teachings of the religion and to be disciplined and developed, then again there has to be something called that everyone can benefit from. This thing, my brothers and sisters, is the heart. It's the heart. The heart is the center of the relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's the starting point of every action. So, as our heart accompanies us everywhere, no one can stop or delay or interrupt that connection. No one can take control of it or even deal with any or adjust or tweak its intentions. That heart remains in everyone's chest and no one has access to it. Even the shaitan. You know, subhanAllah, when we read the work of the scholars or what they teach us about Surah An-Nas, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ مَلِكِ النَّاسِ إِلَهِ النَّاسِ, seeking refuge from the shaitan, we come to a verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الَّذِي يُوَسْوِسُ فِي صُدُورِ النَّاسِ, the shaitan, Satan, who whispers at the chest of a human being, not the heart, because he cannot access or control the heart, but he just keeps on going round the chest, round the chest, round the chest, whispering, so that this whispering can take an effect can affect the person, and this person can affect his own heart by listening, by allowing to follow, by allowing the desires to take over, by laziness, anything which allows the shaitan's whisper to have succeeded over the strength and the perseverance of the person to move away the whispers of the shaitan by doing what needs to be done, such as, for example, dhikr, remembrance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, the one that is far, that is distant from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will appoint to them a shaitan who will be a friend to them. So can you imagine? It will be a companion to them. So the heart, no one can control. That is, the heart is the center of the relationship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one has control of this. So because no one has control, then what everyone needs is will, perseverance, and to have real determination. So we need to understand that it starts with us and it remains with us. So the simple answer is, what is the priority? The simple answer is to prioritize what Allah and the Prophet, peace be upon him, have prioritized. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that commanded, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, is the guide to fulfilling that command. And this is very, very important, because the Prophet, peace be upon him, gives us a very profound answer to how we should have a priority in front of our eyes. So when we're talking about the teachings of the religion and talking about the teachings of the Quran and the Sunnah, we should not just be focused on the teachings in terms of the do's and the don'ts and the content of what the verses say and the hadith say, but we should also be looking at what the priorities are. Because what someone may do, they may disregard or not have much focus on what the priority is, but they're focusing a lot on the verses and on the, on the Quran, on the Sunnah, on the teachings of the scholars, on the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all of these things. But if you don't have all of this in context of what the priority is, then there will be an issue. This will cause a burden for the person. Although the religion is not a burden, but someone can make it a burden for themselves by restricting and constraining themselves. They're restricting themselves because they are dealing with things in a very narrow, in a very limited way, whereas if it's placed in the priority, or if the priority is understood while trying to understand and practice all of this, it will open up many doors. So everyone must be focused on knowing what the priorities are. This is very, very important, and to follow, to avoid going round in a vicious circle and causing for themselves a lot of confusion and a lot of frustration. Now, if you imagine that there's a priority set, but someone is not conscious of this priority, and they want to better themselves, they want to advance, and all of the things that we've mentioned before, but this isn't happening, or it's happening in a very slow way, or they are they are told or they are made to understand that there will be a better impact on them if they do these things, but it's because their priority isn't correct or they're not understanding what the priority is, it's delaying this and it's causing them frustration. Now let's listen to what the Prophet, peace be upon him, says. He says in a hadith, and this hadith is in Al-Bukhari and Muslim and Imam Ahmad as well. Verily in the body there is a flesh. If it is sound, the entire body becomes sound, and if corrupt, the entire body is corrupt. Verily, it is the heart. So the heart is the core. And you see now the relationship between the heart and the body. So again, we're coming back to how everything is very closely interconnected. If the body is correct, it will have an impact. If the heart is correct, if it's sound, if it's pure, it will have an impact on the rest of the body. The mind, the actions, everything will be in a pure state. So what we find when we talk about, or when we go through many verses and many hadiths, we find that in Islam, the heart is viewed as the essence of the individual. And Islam focuses a lot on the condition of the heart. And this is because a number of reasons, mainly because it occupies a core position in the spiritual development and action. Remember, our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that spiritual element, it's not a material relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is one problem a lot of people are having today. That because of the world that we're living in, because of the material world that we're living in, because people are allowing themselves to be driven through material, even their thinking and their perception and calculation of things is very material. Even their body and their actions and how they conduct themselves, it's through a lot of materialism. Even when they have problems in life and they have difficulties, they're looking very, very narrowly through just the material solutions on how they can resolve their problems. But they are forgetting the spiritual side. And this is what the Prophet, peace be upon him, is teaching us. Can you imagine he was teaching this to the companions? Obviously, he's talking to us as well through teaching the companions. But can you imagine the companions what materialism was there? What technology was there? What was available at the time of the companions? But this is a lesson and teachings for the companions and for us as well. But our condition is a lot worse. Obviously, we never compare ourselves with companions, but even the life that we're living in, we have so many more distractions. But we must remember something, that these distractions, no matter how many they are, or how intense they are, or how broad they are, or how many they are in terms of quantity, this should never be a case if the state of the heart is correct. Because if the state of heart is correct, if you have one distraction or you have 100 distractions, it should make no difference, because the heart allows you to be very focused in that spiritual relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and in embarking on that process of developing spiritually. Hence we call it the sacred journey. It's a journey. It's a journey of knowing how to relate and how to deal with these material things. We're not disregarding them completely, because we have to interact and deal with them. But it's how much control does someone have in their inner self? How much control does their heart have of things around them, where the person is in self-harmony and in self-control, that they are not distracted or driven or overindulging in these material things. So, like we say, Islam views the heart as the essence of an individual, and that's why there is so much focus. And that's why the Prophet, peace be upon him, has set it out very, very clearly that this is your priority. In other words, this you should have in front of your eyes all the time. You should have your heart. What is happening to the condition of your heart? Is your heart developing, etc.? And if we can give one small example of in Ramadan, for example, there is a recording, inshallah, on YouTube, not on the YouTube channel, but it's by some a community, a mosque. There was a lecture given some time ago, so you can go back to, because I elaborate a lot on this on this topic. If you look at Ramadan, it was actually recorded in Ramadan. If you go back to Ramadan and you see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He has prescribed Ramadan, why? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word tattaqoon. So you may be conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You may be mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now when we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to us about consciousness of Allah and being mindful of Allah, and here we mean the awakening of the heart. We mean here not the actual mind as in the brain. We're talking about a heart matter. How many people during Ramadan, while they're fasting, while they're performing the night prayer of Taraweeh, and while they're reading lots of Quran, how many of us focus at the same time saying, right, I need my heart in front of my eyes. So during Ramadan, day 1, day 2, day 5, day 10, I'm asking myself, is my heart changing? Is my heart developing? Is my heart purifying? Is my heart gaining more mindfulness and consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in my actions, in the way that I perceive things, etc. So these are very, very important. This is a very, very important matter, that we not only in Ramadan, but if the priority, generally speaking, is the heart, then we should be having our heart in front of our eyes and saying, is my heart changing from day to day, from month to month, from year to year? What am I doing in order to work on this heart? What am I doing to embark on a journey to purify this heart and to purify the nafs? And inshallah, we talk about this in the section of ihsan in this book later on, inshallah. But we have a very detailed focus on how to embark on this journey to purify the heart and the nafs, inshallah. So nothing shall benefit a person on a day of judgment, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran itself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions it in several places, that nothing shall benefit the person on a day of judgment except the one who returns to Allah with a pure, sound heart. It's mentioned in the Quran, and the commentators speak about it a lot. So the heart here, very important, refers to the spiritual heart. This is when the heart becomes free from spiritual illnesses and character defects and character flaws. Now, inshallah, we give just a few examples just so that we can see the importance of the heart. We'll give 4 examples, inshallah. The benefits of a sound and pure heart are immense, and these are just a few of many, many examples that we have in the Quran and the Sunnah. First of all, the heart is where the intentions are. Now, if we go back to the hadith that we all know, the hadith of the intention, that all actions are by the intention, i.e., all actions of religious matters are by the intention as to whether it will be accepted or it will not be accepted. So it's very important. So if the intention is sound, the deed will be met with acceptance. If the intention is corrupt, then the act will be rejected. And intention is not just black and white. It's not just if it's something is accepted or something is not accepted. But even a small act can become very enormous by an intention, and the opposite as well. It can become a great action can become rejected by an intention. Also, the second example is the heart is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is his focus is turned to. In a hadith, the Prophet, peace be upon him, says, indeed, Allah does not look at your form or your appearance, but He looks at your heart. And in another hadith, does not look at your appearance and your wealth, but He looks at your heart and your actions. The third example, the heart is where the Quran is understood. The heart is where the Quran is understood. So, true understanding and realization comes from the heart, which contains the deeper intelligence and wisdom. So, to be enlightened with the truth means that there is real understanding. So, if there is not, then it could be concluded that that's due to the heart being corrupt or being impure. So if a person is ignorant of purifying themselves, they'll be left in ignorance of true sacred understanding of the Quran, and the same goes for the Sunnah as well. And we see in the Quran, subhanAllah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows us the link between the heart and between understanding. And this is very clear in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, will they not reflect on the Quran, or do they have locks on their hearts? So the word reflect and the heart, there's a link. And in the fourth example, the heart is where piety and God consciousness is, taqwa, which we mentioned just earlier when we gave the example of Ramadan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and be mindful of Allah. Surely Allah knows best what is in the heart. In a hadith, the Prophet, peace be upon him, explains, taqwa is here pointing to his heart 3 times. And when the companions asked, who are the best of people? Who is the best of people? He explained, those with a pure heart and a truthful tongue. So then the companions, they asked the Prophet, peace be upon him, we understand what a truthful tongue is, but what is a pure heart? Then the Prophet ﷺ, he responded by saying, it's the one that is pious and pure, with no sins, injustice or envy in it. So this is a few examples, but we can see there are many dimensions. Just by mentioning 4 examples, there are many dimensions and many benefits that return to a person as a person when they focus on what the priority is and what the heart is. So with intention, for example, we're talking about the actions. So the body. Remember the 3 circles. Always remember the 3 circles. The mind, the heart, and the actions, the body. So when we say the intentions is what makes the action accepted and the action in line and acceptable Islamically. When we talk about the heart is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his focus is on, then we see that this is the heart element of the 3 circles that we talk about. It's in it's in a safe condition. And when we talk about the Quran, we're talking about the Quran, again, about something that is meanings that are instilled in our heart, and it creates a vision to how we will implement this, and how we will live as Quranic people, and how we will live in context of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught us in the Quran and how we should be living. And when we talk about piety and God consciousness, we're talking about the whole condition of a person being conscious with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and being in line and being in harmony with the right and the wrong, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet, peace be upon him, teaches us. So it's very important that we get the priority right when doing anything. When we look at our heart, is my intention correct? Was there a bit of desire there? Was there an issue? Was my intention pure? The condition of the heart will have a very strong impact on everything, and it will save people going around in circles and creating for themselves, like we said, frustration. And it will allow a person to elevate while they're embarking, while they're taking steps in practicing their religion. It will allow them to elevate a lot. And also the actions that they end up doing, whether it's religious actions or whether it's dealings with people, it will become a lot more refined and a lot more perfected, inshallah, because obviously the refining of the heart falls under the ihsan, which the meaning of it is perfection. It's about perfection. It's about refining to be able to perfect our inner state, and it has an impact on the rest of the body. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He helps us and guides us to purifying ourselves and to bettering ourselves, inshallah. For it is only through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we are able to do anything, for He is the one that creates us and what we do. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun, wa salamun ala al-mursaleen, walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.